Hi, everybody. This is Rob Packard from Medical Device Academy, and we are live. This is another live streaming webinar on our YouTube channel. We're going to be talking today about FDA inspection crash carts. And if you've never heard of an FDA inspection crash cart, it doesn't really exist. It's just what I'm calling a mobile cart that has the things that you need for an FDA inspection. And the reason why it's mobile is when you are going to have the FDA come in and visit your facility and conduct an inspection, they're going to go in the conference room, but you can't leave all the things that you need for an FDA inspection in the conference room all the time. So if you have it on a mobile cart ahead of time and you know everything is on there and you know exactly where it's located, you can just wheel that cart right into the conference room and set up in just a matter of minutes. So it's a great tool to help you make sure that you have everything you need and you can plan ahead. Otherwise, to be like, oh, I need this. Oh, I need this. You'll keep on having to leave the room and come back. Make sure it's all prepped ahead of time and you're ready to go. It's really important to have that all there right next to you so you can get whatever you need off that cart and put it in front of you and have somebody else help you prepare that cart. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. In addition, any questions you have related to FDA inspections, don't hesitate to shoot me an email or post them in the chat today. You can type right into the chat and we can answer your questions live in this live streaming video. And if you're watching this on a recording, I'll try to put additional links down below. We're going to have a link to our FDA webinar, or FDA inspection webinar. That's going to be next Monday at noon Eastern time. And I'm going to be speaking about FDA inspections, and we're also going to have Sharon Moreau is also going to be on there. She has a lot of experience, probably even more experience than I do, actually conducting and hosting FDA inspections from the years that she worked for DeRoyal. So looking forward to that and hope to see you next week in our webinar. So let's jump into what should be in your crash cart for an FDA inspection. So number one thing that you can expect the FDA is going to do when they first come in is they're going to be looking for procedures. The sequence for an FDA inspector, they're always looking for procedures first because they have 25 different procedures they're supposed to verify in a routine inspection you have. So if you have a binder of all your procedures, that's a really good idea. Now, why did we spend tens of thousands of dollars developing electronic quality management systems? It's so we have them available to everybody on demand and only the current version, and it facilitates the review and approval of the documents electronically. But for an FDA inspector, it's actually easier to have a paper copy in front of them. And the reason why you want a copy is because they can take it with them. The FDA inspectors are allowed to take copies of procedures with them. They're also allowed to take copies of records. There's only 3 records that they're not allowed to take with them. Number 1, they're not allowed to take the management review meeting minutes. Number 2, they're not allowed to take the internal audit reports. And number 3, they're not allowed to take the supplier audit reports. But everything else is fair game. And any corrective actions that come from your manager review, your internal audits, or your supplier audits, those are all fair game through the CAPA process. Now, if an FDA inspector asks for those, do you really want to poke the bear and say, no, you can't have that because the regulation says so? It's probably not your best strategy. Probably a better strategy would be, that's not one of the records that I can let you take with you because those are exempt. However, we don't have anything to hide, so here's a copy, but you'll have to give it back to me. You can take notes all you want, but I can't let you take that copy with you. Other records you can take with you, but not that one. You also shouldn't bring in any original records. So a copier would be a really great thing to have, but you kind of want a high-speed copier, and you don't want it to generate a lot of noise. So I prefer to have the copier outside the room and have a high-speed copier just outside the room. In the room, what would be really nice to have is a big, fat, thick 3-ring binder with all the documents that are procedures in that binder. The records probably can't fit all your records in one binder, So as those are requested by the inspector, you're going to send somebody as a runner to go get those records, make a copy for you, make a copy for the FDA inspector, and then bring them into the room. But they leave the originals outside the room. So number one thing, you need a binder with all your procedures. Do you need all of them on day one? Probably not. You can also predict the FDA is probably going to be there for 4.5 days. The first 4 days, they're going to look at the 4 major processes. The first one they're going to look at is CAPA. They'll look at complaints, MDRs, and CAPAs, non-conforming materials. They might even, well, those are really the things that they'll be focusing on. It's CAPAs, complaints, MDRs, and non-conforming material all under CAPA, because those are the things that feed into your CAPA system. Day 2, they're probably going to look at design controls. That's the second major process that they typically look at. So when they're looking at design controls, they'll pick a product or product family, and they'll ask for your design procedure, your design change procedure, your design transfer procedure. They could all be one procedure with 3 different sections. That's fine. And then they'll ask for your DMR. So if you don't know what a DMR, you got to learn real fast. It's 21 CFR 820.181. You need a device master record. And that's your current recipe on how to make your product. So you're going to need that. And you can't anticipate, if you have 100 different products, you can't have all your DMRs in that room. Each one of those might be a binder or multiple binders. I came across one product that was 28 binders. I'm not going to bring that in the room unless the FDA inspector asks for it, and you're probably only going to bring them certain records from it. So you ask the FDA inspector, well, which product or product families do you want the DMR for? And then once they tell you, if you have that 28 binder situation, you want to explain to the FDA inspector, I can bring that. It's going to be about 28 binders. Would you like to sample specific records from that? And that's where a DMR index is so valuable. If you have a DMR index, then you can give them the index, which might be only a couple pages long. It's a table of contents of what's in the DMR, and then they can sample from that. So you give them a copy of the DMR index, have them sample what records they want from it, and then you bring those records. But always bring copies, one for you, one for the FDA inspector. And then the third step from there would be design changes. So they're going to look at what changes you've made since you got your 510K for the product, and they're going to ask for specific examples of design changes, and they're going to be looking for, did you adequately validate your design changes, and did you determine whether those design changes required a new 510K submission or not? So that's day 2, your design changes in design controls. Day 3, they'll probably look at production process controls. So here, they're going to be looking specifically at the DMR for that product family, and they're going to be looking at all the production processes that are related to it. So validation of production processes, inspection techniques, your specifications for your raw materials. This is when they'll probably ask for a tour of the facility. They'll go out and actually look at the production line. They might even look at specific production processes. They'll actually interview operators that are working on the line. They'll take notes. They'll see if people are following procedures. This is when they might evaluate if you have a clean room. Do you have gowning procedures? Do you have monitoring in the clean rooms? Do you have cleaning? They'll look at maintenance records. They'll look at calibration records. This is when a really good inspector will really look at the whole manufacturing process, not just looking at your DHR, but they should be looking at ancillary processes such as calibration, maintenance, validation of the processes, and incoming inspection, how you handle the workflow, how you prevent mix-ups, how you do line clearance is really critical. If you've ever had a recall because you mixed up labels from one lot to another, you should know what line clearance is. You learn the hard way. And then on the 4th day, they typically look at the management processes. Now, do they have to work in this order? No, they don't. They could work in any order they want, but they almost always start with CAPA, and then it's a little more unpredictable which process of the 4 they'll look at next. But usually they spend 1 day on each one. And for management, they're looking at internal audits, management review, purchasing controls. Those are the big processes they're going to look at. Like I said before, they're not supposed to look at your management review meeting minutes, but they'll look at your management review procedure, your schedule for conducting management reviews, verified you conducted them, made sure the people showed up, and make sure you actually have meeting minutes, at least with like a cover page or something. And they might even ask for, do you have any CAPAs that resulted from that? And link back to your CAPA process. For the internal audits, where's your internal audit procedure? Where's your internal audit schedule? Did you conduct the internal audits? Who are the internal auditors? Are they trained and qualified? Where are their training records? Things like that. Did you open up CAPAs from the internal audit findings? For purchasing controls, this is the #1 area I think probably companies ought to focus on, other than CAPAs and complaints, because that always hits people for top findings for 483 inspection observations. But after that, the next area that I would look at is probably purchasing controls and supplier quality management. And the reason why is we just are coming off a global pandemic where we had supply chain interruptions and companies weren't able to get parts in. And they made all kinds of changes to things to try to adapt and keep on delivering product. But did you qualify those suppliers? Did you revalidate the suppliers? Did they follow the same specs? So looking at your supplier controls and making sure they can deliver, that's something I think you really ought to be focusing on for this round of FDA inspections coming right out of the global pandemic. So focus on that area in particular. And so if you're going through a pre-market approval inspection, so you're applying for a PMA, they're going to come out, inspect, guaranteed they're going to look a little bit more closely at supply chain. And in particular for these class 3 devices that have PMAs, it's really important to make sure you have your supplier controls rock solid, because any change in suppliers requires a PMA supplement. So you have to either notify the FDA or get FDA to approve changes in suppliers in any components that are supplied by an existing supplier. So supplier controls are much more important for a PMA class 3 product. And they'll even look at your suppliers. So what are they outsourcing in terms of raw materials, components, and outsourced processes such as sterilization, packaging, any testing that has to be done. Let's say it's bioburden or endotoxin testing, things like that. Trying to think of other things that they're going to look at. So those are the 4 big areas, but let's get back to the crash cart. Excuse me. So on the crash cart, you have your binder, you have your procedures. What else should you have on that crash cart? Well, you're going to probably want a computer. So you could have a computer for yourself. You could have a computer for a scribe that works in the room. You could have it for both of you. But what kind of computer are you going to have? Are you going to have your normal computer? Or are you going to have something that's faster and more smaller and takes up less room? So that's a decision you need to make. Me personally, when I'm working in audit, my favorite tool is actually use a Pixel book. They're really small, really fast, and they don't have the same kind of operating system problems that you have with something that's a Mac or a PC. The Chromebooks, the Pixel books, those work on the Chrome operating system, and so they're very robust, bug-free, virus-free, hopefully. And I find I can open up a Google Doc and I can type in it really fast. So that's great for taking notes. But here's the other reason why I prefer that format. It's because I can share the document with anybody else I want in the organization. And they can type in it simultaneously, and I can see them typing in it. So that's really powerful to be able to type into a document, typing notes as a scribe, and be able to pose questions to other people or have them pose questions to you directly in it. So that's one of the ways to do this. And then you in the scribe can communicate back and forth by typing in here, and the FDA inspector can't see what you're saying. Now, another tool that you might try is your cell phone. So you could use Slack. And if you're using Slack, you could also have a Slack channel specifically for this inspector. Now, I have a client, we just finished an internal audit with them this week, and they had multiple Slack channels going for different things. But they were doing this because they're going to have a notified body certification or recertification audit where they're going to have 3 auditors on site at the same time for 3 days. So in this situation, they need to keep the conversation straight between the 3 different requests from the 3 different auditors at the same time. So they need 3 different Slack channels. Now, this being a software company, what other tool would they use other than Slack? It's number one tool that I see programmers like to use. They sit there on their phone and Slack back and forth, attach documents, and they can keep track of the threads. So that's a really powerful tool, but you can decide who you share that channel with and whether they only have visual, they can only view the channel, or can they actually edit and respond in the channel. So you can decide what access they have, and it can even be people outside. It can be real time. I find that's really, really powerful. So if you want to have your own Slack channel, that could be, then people would share the request electronically, and then the scribe could hit print, and it could print at the local printer right outside the door. And that might be a great way to make documents available, make records available to the inspection team that's in the room with the inspector, is through a Slack channel. So that would be another tool I like to do. So get yourself a really fast Chromebook or Pixelbook. That would be my personal recommendation. Can you use your regular desktop? Sure. Can you use a regular PC or Mac? Sure. All of them work. I usually have 2. I even have a backup. So this audit this week, I had my Remarkable tablet right here. And in addition to having the Remarkable tablet, I also had my PC and I also had my Pixelbook. I had all 3. So no matter what happened, I was all set. And of course, I had my phone too, so I could do stuff on my phone. And this, now you have voice recognition, you have handwriting recognition. I can email stuff and back and forth. So there was really great tools that you can use out there that are electronic. So think very carefully about what kind of hardware you want on your cart for this FDA inspection. And think not just for yourself, but also for the scribe that's going to be in the room. Things that would be good things to have would be pieces of paper, notebook paper, go old-fashioned, and that way the FDA inspector can write their document requests on there. And you might even have extra pens so you can write things down. You might want to have a calculator in case you have to do any calculations. It's nice to have a calculator. We can all do it on our phone, but you might want to do it on a calculator instead of doing it on your phone. Your phone battery is going to die during an audit. It always happens. So make sure you have a spare charger and a spare charging cable. In fact, I don't have it right here in front of me, but in the other room, I've got a really great portable charging station. You can plug it in. It's like a little tower, and it has all kinds of normal 3-prong connectors for or outlets for all kinds of devices. So you can 2 on each side. So you get 8 different outlets on this one little pod. And then in addition to that, we have all kinds of USB ports for charging as well. So you can plug in 8 different outlets and all these USB ports all on one charging station. And it also has surge protection. So that's really powerful to put that in the middle of the room. We never have enough outlets in a conference room for inspectors and auditors and the management rep and the scribe. There's just never enough. And people need to plug in their cell phones. Give yourself a little charging station that's portable, and then you only have to make that one connection. Make sure it has a really long cord, but don't trip your inspector. So don't create those workplace hazards of tripping everybody with the long cords. Tape them down and make sure they're routed in a way that's clean. If you have one of those fancy tables that has all the outlets in the middle, you're good. You don't need to worry about all that, but that's something to consider if you don't have that kind of table. So that's something I would put on my crash cart. Other things that I would put on my crash cart. For whatever reason, I'm very visual, and I like to have things in big, bold letters sometimes. So this is a fine Sharpie. You want the really thick Sharpie, and you maybe want different colors. And to underline things like, I need this now. And you could snap a picture of what you wrote on there and send it to somebody in the Slack channel, and they get the picture. Maybe you're going to do a drawing for the FDA inspector, so you might want some blank pieces of paper to do a drawing for them. That doesn't happen very often, but process flow diagrams, if somebody wanted to explain something. Trying to think of other things that we usually like to have in those. Staplers. You got to have a stapler. Just the other day, one of the documents that they printed out was something like 30 pages, and the regular stapler couldn't get through all the pages. So we had clips. You can use paper clips. You can use the bigger clips that will hold it all together. But you might also want to have more than one stapler, a regular stapler and then an industrial one for really thick documents. You might even want to have a folder, so a manila folder to put things in to help the FDA keep their stuff organized and keep your stuff organized. And at the end of the day, you organize it by folders. You could even organize those by process. So, okay, we're done with purchasing. I'll put everything in the purchasing folder. Okay, we're done with complaints. Put everything in the complaint folder. And then you hand that folder to somebody and they can file everything away, all the records and documents. Other things that you might want to have on that. Food. So snacks. Where did I put it? Probably moved it. Well, I always have snacks at my desk. So I happen to like spicy food. So I've got a bunch of spicy pistachio nuts. But it's not a bad idea to have shelf-stable snacks in the room for when you get hungry or the FDA inspector gets hungry. Most FDA inspectors won't eat food. They won't take drinks. They won't have coffee. But it's because they're trained to avoid at any cost the perception that they can be bribed or they're being persuaded in some way to give you a better inspection because you treated them to a lobster and filet lunch. Instead, you put snacks on the table for anybody at the table in case they're hungry. But if you're going to put out nuts, make sure nobody in the room has nut allergies. Water is a really good thing. Put a carafe in the table of water. Put a carafe in the table of coffee. Have coffee cups. Maybe the FDA inspector will have it. Maybe they won't. But if you're in the U.S., you can expect the FDA inspector is going to leave at lunch. If you're in a foreign country, the FDA inspector will probably stay on site during lunch. And so the rules are a little bit different for foreign inspections. And it's okay to give them some snacks. But make sure you know what they're going to like and what would be appropriate. Avoid allergies, and you don't want to put people to sleep. So we don't need pizzas. We don't need calzones. We don't need a bunch of pasta. Put people to sleep. Snacks work great. Meat, cheese, shelf-stable food, nuts, those work. What else do you want on this cart? So water, bottles of water, great way to go. These are all things you could put on that cart. Another one. I almost forgot about this. Probably the most important ingredient on the cart, pain relievers. So somebody in the room, I guarantee, will get a headache during this 5 days that the inspector's there. So somebody needs maybe some ibuprofen, maybe some Tylenol, maybe some aspirin. I don't know what it's going to be. You're not supposed to be handing out medicines during it, but the person that has a really bad migraine will forgive you for handing out some meds to kill their headache. And it might be you. You might have your own headache, so you want to treat yourself. So that's something I always make sure I have in my bag whenever I'm traveling for an auditor inspection. I always make sure I have Advil. A couple times I've forgotten it back at the hotel, and somebody's been kind enough to give me some. But when I travel a lot by airplane, I usually get some sort of headache for all the dehydration. So definitely drink a lot of water and have some pain relievers on the cart. What else do I want on my crash cart? Trying to think. So one of the things that you need to do, I'm in the middle of writing our work instruction. I wanted to have it done by today, but we're going to have it done this weekend for Monday's FDA inspection webinar. But in that work instruction, I'm actually going to have, here's what I put on my crash cart. So you create your own work instruction or buy ours that has, this is what we recommend for a crash cart, and feel free to modify the crash cart suggestions with your own ideas. Other things that I would put on there, like a phone list. So you have everybody's email and phone numbers so you can contact people quickly. A lot of times I see people like, what's their number? And they're looking on their phone, they're looking on the computer, they're calling somebody to get somebody's number. Have the phone list there in front of you. Trying to think of what else. We have a copier outside the room. One of the things that I have seen companies do a lot more recently is they will have projectors. So the purpose of having the projector would be to project documents up on the screen so both the scribe can see it. If you have somebody in the hot seat, what I call the hot seat is the person being interviewed. You bring in the process owner for, let's say, purchasing. So the purchasing manager is there and they're answering the questions about the procedure and the records. If you can display things up on the screen, then everybody can see it in big and bold. You might want to bring up details from your MRP system that are harder to print out. So sometimes it's easier to do that way. One of the really neat tools that I've seen, one of the clients we have worked with, they actually have a button on the table to share and unshare. So whenever you want to share, you click the button just like you were taking yourself off mute. That allowed their computer to unshare. So everybody at the table could share their computer screen at any time and unshare it. So that's a really nice feature if your company can afford that particular tool. But you might want to consider a projector so you can put things up on the screen. I talk about the crash cart and I talk about a conference room where the FDA inspector is going to be. A lot more companies are also having a back room. So the purpose of the back room isn't to hide things from the FDA. The purpose of the back room is to have a team of people that can gather the records that the FDA is looking for. Sometimes it takes a while to find the records they're looking for or find the information the inspector is looking for. Sometimes they want you to give them a summary of things like, tell me how many complaints you had last year for this product. Well, that's going to take a little bit. We'll have to figure that out for you. So having a back room where you can have these discussions back and forth and brainstorm and figure out how can we get this for the inspector, that really helps. So you kind of need at least two conference rooms, one for the inspector, one for the back room. And it's not to hide it from the inspector. It might be the next room, but it's going to be a lot more noise in that room. There's going to be a lot more talking in that room. And you're going to be brainstorming things and discussing things. So you want to be able to do that, hopefully out of earshot of the FDA inspector, because you're not sure what the answer is yet and don't want them hearing every single word. So a lot of people will have a back room. If you have a back room, put a projector in the back room. You might want to think about a crash cart for the back room too. But the cool thing with the back room is you can project the Slack channel up on the screen so everybody can see it. Instead of everybody looking down at their phones or their tablets or their computer going back and forth, you can put real time up on the screen what the Slack channel is showing so they can see live streaming. So if a top management wants to see what's going on, they can look at the Slack channel, but they can also duck their head in like, what are you doing about this particular request up here? They can check, oh, this is something you should know about that particular item. They can stick their head into the back room, relay that information, people can type it into the Slack channel. Whenever you have somebody that's going to be going into the hot seat in the main room, you might have them go into the back room first, get prepped, get the documents, get information that they need, and then carry the documents with them into the main room where you're conducting the FDA inspection. You might also put the copier in the back room. So usually the back room needs to be a little bit bigger because you're going to have more people in there. I've also seen one of the major medical device companies out there, the way they did things, they had catered lunch. They had a fridge in there stocked with all the best drinks, everything kind of soda and Monster and energy drink you could possibly think, everything kind of caffeination you could want. They had a coffee maker in it. They ordered pizza for everybody and subs. That was what the back room got. They got all kinds of special treatment because they don't want those people leaving the room. They want them to do everything they can to help support that inspection. And then they take a break when the FDA inspector leaves for lunch, and then they get back to work. So you might want to have a little bit bigger room and a little bit more extras for the team that's in that back room. So crash cart for the main room, crash cart for the back room. Let's see, what else? You want to label your crash cart too. So FDA inspection room, FDA back room. And it doesn't just have to be FDA. You can use the same crash cart for your notified body certification audits or supplier or customer audits. So it's a really good idea to use those audits with third-party auditors and customer inspectors and internal audits as practice for the FDA inspection. So use some of the same tools in the same way and work out the bugs in those practice sessions. So that sort of gives you an idea of what would be on my FDA inspection crash cart. But if you're interested, shoot me an email and I'll be happy to send you an email with, hey, this is what's in the cart. I'll copy and paste out of what's in the what's in our inspection instructions, so you can know what's in the crash cart. And at some point here, maybe I'll just put it in the notes down below this weekend for this particular video. So you'll be able to see it down below if you're watching this video. But you'll have to wait in probably a day or two until I can copy and paste that in. So I hope this is helpful to everybody. I got to run for our weekly meeting of our team, and we actually have guests this week. But thank you very much for participating in the live streaming video, and I'll see you next week. Next week, I think we're also 12:30, but always check our page. I have a countdown timer there, and it'll tell you when the next one's going to be. But it'll be noon or 12:30 next week, Eastern time. Bye-bye.